Hi everybody, Paul Richards here with PTZOptics, and I have with me Yuda Widawsky from Midabrim Communications, and he has over 6 years of experience live streaming weddings over here in New York City here in America, and all the way over the ocean, over the Atlantic Ocean in Israel as well. So he has a lot of experience. We're going to ask him some questions about what it takes to live stream weddings, how to be successful, and I think it's a really great wrap up to our free guide and free course on how to live stream weddings. So Yuda, how you doing today?
Hey, Paul. Thank you very much. I'm doing great.
I'm so
How are
happy to
you
have you
guys?
here. We're doing great. We've been just finishing up a huge campaign on how to live stream weddings, helping people understand what it's like to be really in your shoes. And I wanted to start off by asking you, when you live stream a wedding, where does it actually go? Does it go to Facebook? Does it go to YouTube? What do your clients usually prefer?
Well, that's a great question. I mean, we have such a dynamic clientele that it really depends on what they need. If, for example, it's on the elderly crowd, then they don't know what Facebook is. So if we're going to have a hard time getting them onto Facebook, and we would need to broadcast to YouTube or even our own private Wowza server. So we kind of create our own CDN. And sometimes we do it simultaneously to Facebook, YouTube, Wowza, and basically any platform. This way, anybody could get onto it. But it really depends on the viewers, if they're tech savvy or not. I can tell you that I have, out of all my weddings I've done, the majority of them have been broadcasting to elderly people that can't make the flight out to the wedding, and therefore they're not tech savvy. So I need to broadcast to the easiest platform possible, which would be either YouTube, live stream as well, Ustream, or just anything that they could click on once and get to that link and watch it. Facebook sometimes can be a little bit more complicated, and just by hearing the word Facebook, they're kind of like, I don't know.
Yeah, and
So
sometimes even YouTube has that similar connotation where it feels kind of consumer, and you might want to provide a
yeah,
premium, experience. So that makes a lot of sense.
yeah.
Great. Well, I wanted to ask you about the physical streaming at your events here at the weddings. How many people does it take? Is this something that you can do on your own, or is it a multiple person operation?
Okay, so it depends. It depends on the setup, just like anything else. You have to plan it out way before you even go to the event. And it can be done with one person, but that means you're going to need more time to set up. You're going to have a little bit more of an issue if there's an issue with the audio. It's going to be harder to leave the camera and to go to deal with the audio problem. Although it can be done, I always recommend two people staff. Every team that goes out to any of our broadcasts, we send two people. One person that's dealing with the video, and the other one that's dealing with everything around it. If it's the audio, if it's the network, doing looking on our graph to see that we don't have any drop packets or anything like that. So that usually I say two. Some setups you even need three. For example, if I'm using two PTZ cameras, PTZOptics cameras, that's what I use personally. And I have one person that is on the PTZ cameras, another person who's on another camera, a third camera, a regular ENG camera, and of course there's the one more person that deals with the technical stuff, if it's hooking up wires, switching out batteries, dealing with the audio transmitters, and even getting the staff food and drinks.
Yeah, so it seems like 2 to 3 is now that's good for wedding sizes. Let's say maybe anywhere less than 500 people, probably.
Yeah, 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 definitely. We're basically you could go anywhere from the smallest wedding, which usually I would say a small wedding here at least would be 100, 150 people, and to the larger weddings, which would definitely be 500, even more people.
Wow. So one of the things I wanted to ask you, this is more of like a little bit of a vague question, but you've done so much wedding streaming in your career here over 6 years, which is really a lot in this young industry. Can you tell us a little bit of what you've learned and anything that you maybe over the years has been valuable to you from an experience perspective about live streaming weddings?
Yeah, definitely. First of all, it is so dynamic. Never take anything for granted. The industry really, the technology changes and you always have to be up to date, but the problems that you would have at the event can vary between even something so simple like you go into a hall and like, I don't have a network connection here at all. I don't have cell phone network, I don't have Wi-Fi, nothing. So you have to really be prepared for everything when you go to the weddings or plan ahead. Those are the two ways of doing it. Either go with all the equipment possible that you can think of that you might need, or go to the place beforehand and scout out the venue. Make sure that you have a network that you can broadcast on. If it's using the hall's network, if it's bringing in another network of your own, ordering it through any of the providers, or even using any bonded connections, with any of the bonding solutions. But that, number one, is the network, because you never want to stop or have any issues with the broadcast itself. The network is the key to success.
Yeah, I think that's such a good advice, because one of the things that this is definitely not is it's not a permanently installed studio. You're taking your gear out into the wild and scouting out the place that you're going to be, or and understanding the needs of really a mobile setup versus a real installed studio.
Right, exactly. And of course, on top of that, the other issues that what you learn from it is that you have to be able to work with everybody. There's going to be other people at the wedding. I'm not even talking about the guests. I'm talking about the other vendors. You're going to have other videographers. You're going to have photographers. And you really have to know to work with everyone, knowing like if they're taking a wide shot, they don't want you in the picture, so you got to move if you're with the camera. If you're with the PTZOptics camera, we always mount them in places that won't bother anyone. So you have to be on top of that as well, and you have to know your clientele, the whole setup, the whole process of the wedding.
You mentioned wedding photographers and the other people involved in the wedding. Can I ask you about wedding photographers? Do you work with them? Do wedding photographers ask you to come in as their, the person who's going to do the video portion? Are there wedding photographers, wedding videographers, and then wedding streamers, or is it kind of a mix? Can you explain how it all kind of works together?
Yeah, sure. Well, we really do split to three. You have the photographers, the still photographers, they're getting all the pictures and all that. We do usually have other videographers at the wedding. They're not looking at it as a broadcasting setting. They're looking in the way they're recording is for post-production. They're not going to do anything in their head of live. So they want the close-up, they're looking for the angle, getting better angles, different angles. And when you're talking about broadcasting, your head is more wide shot. Let me think of what the viewer wants to see. We have to give them the feeling that they are there at the wedding. In order to do that, you have to be in their mind, which is totally different than the videographers, which is why you do need to have the photographers, the videographers, and then the broadcasting. 3 different entities, 3 different teams that you need to have in order to do it. I have had people ask me to do the video for them as well, but I told them beforehand, I said to them straight up, it's not going to be the same like having a videographer that he's going to be recording for post-production. It's going to be very different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I totally understand that. I think from a bride's perspective or the family involved, it will probably take some explaining because I understand how the difference is. You're trying to capture the entire event, show, like you said, a wide shot, allow people to kind of peer into that world. And now with all the HD cameras and the high resolution streaming, we can really give them a good picture and make them feel like they're there. But it's so much different from a videographer zooming into the ring as it's being put on the finger,
right,
or sneaking around back, because they're not providing a live
right,
view. They've got all that,
right,
hindsight,
right,
and post-production.
We do that though. We do have a few close-up shots. You mentioned one of that is a close-up shot when when they're switching rings. Yeah, that you're going to zoom in on, that you want to see. But that's kind of like it. You want to get the rest of the ceremony in wide shot because the viewer wants to be able to see as if they were there. Even if it means panning to the crowd because they want to see who was at the wedding. They love, seeing, oh, I know that person. Oh, that's a beautiful dress. Look at what they're wearing. All that thing. They love it. They love it, and that's what they want.
Now, do you ever feel the need to tell the guests that they are being recorded, or is that just assumed that all the cameras are there and they're going to be on camera?
Exactly. Well, it's pretty much assumed that if they're at a wedding and you see all the cameras, they're going to be on. I do have a sign that says, it has a logo of my company, and it says live broadcasting. So it's kind of like a given that they have their live broadcast and they're on camera.
So let me just jump into our next question here. What's the most challenging part of your job when it comes to live streaming a wedding? I know you mentioned the access to internet. Is there anything that's maybe non-technical that still kind of throws a monkey wrench into your production and your workflow?
Knowing how to get around people without getting in their way. That is probably the most complicated, the most challenging aspect of it, because I don't want to be a burden on them. I don't want to interrupt. And I've had, when I started out, it really, it was a difference between then and now. Now people say to me at the end, oh, we didn't even see you. We didn't even know you were there. But back then when I started, we got complaints of, we blocked this one, we blocked that one. It started out a little bit rough, but we learned how to maneuver ourselves in between everybody and how to do it that it won't block them and it won't bother them. Of course, there are times, it depends on the venue, there are times in which it's inevitable and you're going to be blocking someone, but they understand why.
Are there any tips you could, because that seems like such an important tip that you've given us on how to kind of stay out of people's way but still capture the event in the ideal scenario. Are there any tips that you can give us? Because I know I talked to you before about maybe putting up a plant stand in front of cameras, kind of camouflaging the technology. Are there any tips that you can give us? How do you pull, now that you've done this for 6 years, are there any little things that you could, any gems that you could, of knowledge you could give us?
Of course. Of course. First of all, you have to know your client. You have to know their customs, know what they're planning, how they're planning it, what's going to be happening throughout this ceremony. I've done so many different types of weddings. I've done from ultra-Orthodox Jewish weddings to Christian, Christian weddings, and literally I've done everything. For even just a ceremony with no affiliation to any religion, I've done. And you have to know what the process is. That means before the wedding, before the event, go over it with them. Ask them what their plans are for each step of the way. If they have a schedule, that's always the best. Get the schedule. You want to know what's happening when and where you need to be, because there are a lot of times that the bride is going to be doing one thing, the groom is going to be doing something else, and you need to know how to be at each one of their sides during the major parts. For example, in the Jewish world, we have the signing of the, it's called the ketubah, it's like the contract, the vows. We kind of like go to the men's side to where the groom is and he's signing it, and then we got to go to the bride for when the groom comes and he covers the bride with the veil. So you got to know where you need to be at each step of the way. That's probably my first tip. Of course, like I said earlier, knowing where you're going to be, placement, like Paul, like you said, if you're able to camouflage the cameras, do so. It's much nicer. It gives you better press, I guess, PR, that they won't recognize it, so therefore they're going to be like, wow, I can't believe that this was done and we didn't even see the cameras. They're used to seeing these big, massive cameras for broadcasting, and that's always in the way, and you always have those videographers lining up, kind of like blocking the entire thing. The fact that you're able to hide your equipment in a way, camouflaging it, that is probably the nicest thing you can do for them, and they will appreciate it. Once they appreciate it, and once you do a good job, they are going to get the word out. They will be telling their friends. So that is probably the next best thing. You know, do whatever you can in order to make them happy. And that would probably be all I could give you. And of course the network. Be ready for anything.
Yeah. Well, that's such good advice, you know, something that only someone who has live streamed so many weddings would know about getting the schedule in advance and doing those, camouflaging the technology. The thing I didn't get to ask you about when we're on that subject of camouflaging the cameras, how many cameras do you think it takes to really live stream a wedding well? Because as we know, with post-production, you can go around, or with the videographer, you can go around and capture speeds, maybe with just a single camera. But when you're live streaming, you kind of need to be able to cut to capture all the action. As you know, like you said, even the wedding moves from one space to the other throughout the schedule.
Right.
How many cameras do you use on a regular day, and then how many, you know, on an extraordinarily, you know, intricate wedding, let's call it?
So, like I said earlier, really depends on the ceremony, and that's why I said it's important to learn the customs of your client. If you know what they're planning, you're able to prepare. So if you need one camera that can be with full mobility, then use one camera with full mobility. Don't be connected to any wires or anything. Try to be as wireless as you can be. If it means having a second camera for, you know, during the times where the mobility you kind of lose, or you don't want to have that, then use two. It really depends on the setup. Personally, if I'm doing only this ceremony, if I'm broadcasting only this ceremony, then I'm going to go with only one camera. If I am, if I'm broadcasting both the ceremony and dancing, the party, then I'm going to have between 2 to 3 cameras. And I am going to set up my cameras differently based on what comes first and what comes second, and I plan out everything. I have a lineup, just like we do in the broadcasting world of a TV show. We have a lineup. I do the exact same thing for a wedding.
Very interesting.
So I have between 1 and 3, it might standard. The bigger ones, then of course we're talking about 4, 5, 6. Even if you need a GoPro from on top of the what's it called, the
arbor
canopy, I guess.
Canopy, okay.
Canopy, whatever, any of those, yeah. So we kind of have another one giving a wide shot from on top of everybody standing there. Yeah.
And when you're sitting in the director's chair trying to bring people into this wedding, the more cameras the better, obviously, so that you can switch as the movement and the magic of that moment is going around. Now, the next thing I wanted to ask you, now that we talked about cameras, is this is something that is really interesting to me. How do you handle audio? How do you capture the audio? Are there multiple microphones around? Is there a way to capture the audio of the ceremony?
So I really use the wireless audio a lot. I use the transmitters, like even the on-camera transmitter receiver. I use those a ton. When I can be connected wired, I prefer it, only because I don't want to have any interference on the wireless transmitters. But most of the time I am going to be using wireless transmitters and connecting to the audio mixers that the sound men bring. for the band and or DJ or whoever.
I see. So almost as if, so you can bring in the music from the band from their mixing board, and then you're going to put maybe a lapel or a wireless microphone on certain people of interest.
Right, or just even using the on-camera mic, the microphone we just put on top of the camera. Or like I said, if it's during the ceremony, they're always going to be holding a mic, and they're going to be using a sound system in order to get the audio to all of their the guests. So we just tap into that one.
Gotcha. That makes a lot of sense. One of the things I wanted to ask you about, because there was so much involved here, I wanted to ask you about how do you build up a customer package? What are the different options that you have when it comes to live streaming a wedding?
So the way I built it after many attempts, I came to the conclusion it's always best to package it based on time and the equipment needed. Like I said, I need to know what the client is planning, and then I could give them the different packages, but most of them are dependent on time. Personally, I also do different qualities. They can either do 480p, which is standard, either you call it SD or low quality HD, or I give them 1080p, and I package it based on what's needed. Of course, my personal expenses go up when I need more equipment, more bandwidth, and more staff. So I really base it on the amount that I would need, and it's all pre-planning. And after doing it for so long, I kind of came to 3 different packages in HD, 3 different packages in 480p, and I left it at that. Of course, when we're talking about a larger event where I would need more than the 3 people or past 3 cameras, then of course each additional camera is going to cost more. We have the add-ons for that.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah, thanks for just explaining that, because I know there's just so many, you're just juggling so many different balls here with the different options and the different wedding styles and the schedules. So that makes a lot of sense. So
if I may add just one thing, it's really important to know, it's good to do research, market research on the pricing of the videographers. Just start with the videography part, because no matter what we do, we're giving more than that. We're broadcasting, and we're bringing just about the same equipment that the videographers are, so therefore it is supposed to be more expensive than your regular videography. And that's very important to know.
Very good. That's a very good point. So, and like you said, this is really, it's kind of like building blocks. It's like a photographer, a videographer, then on top is the live broadcast for the people that can't make it. My next question kind of is in between the live streaming world and the videographer world. How do you handle post-production? In some cases, you may not have any need, but do you ever get asked to do post-production and create the actual wedding video? So to basically be the videographer and the streamer and all in one.
So when I am asked to do both post-production as well, like I said, I usually do not. I usually do only the streaming, and I leave the videography for the wedding videographers that are there, and I've been working with them a lot. But there are times that I do get asked to do the videography as well. What I usually do is I bring in an additional videographer just for that. And he's going to give me the close-ups. He's going to give me all the shots that I need for the post-production. And I'm going to give the wide shots. And we're kind of synchronized with who's doing what. And then I'm going to send it out to the video editor to put it together, and we send it to the client.
That makes a lot of sense. So you're still getting someone to do those close-ups, high-quality, imagery that people are paying for the videographer, but then you're stitching it together with the production that you've already made with all the wide shots and the energy and the live broadcasted feed.
Yeah, because you can't do the videography that they're looking for with broadcasting. It's 2 totally different methods of videography. You can't combine the 2. It's you can't do the 2 as a single person.
Yeah, not live.
If that makes any sense.
Because of
not live. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. You can't do it live. Exactly.
That makes a lot of sense. And just two more questions here. Thank you so much for doing this, Yuda, because you're bringing so much value to anyone who's interested in looking into these services, the questions to ask, the things to consider. Do you have any tips? And you've been giving us so many tips, so maybe this question, you've given us everything you've got here, but do you have any tips for live streaming a wedding? What should the bride be asking about? What should the family who's interested in getting the best possible production, what kind of questions should they be asking their videographer and live streamer?
They're going to ask everything that they can think of.
Okay.
Let's be real. I can't really come and tell them what to ask, but I do offer them, of course, from the beginning, I tell them, any question they should get back to me. And not only that, I have a network center. I have somebody in my network center that's watching the stream, and we give out the technical support phone number that reaches that network center, that they can help the viewer with whatever problem they are having. Sorry about that, I went out of my view. They're able to call up that number, and they're able to get full technical support. Wow. And so that is something that's very comforting to the viewers, and usually those are the questions that the client, the bride, or the groom's family, both of them, they usually ask those questions of, what are we going to do if there's a problem during the event? Do we have who to speak to? And are you going to be there for all the big things? Are you going to get in our way? One thing I could say is they really don't like having too many photographers, videographers up, by the ceremony. But when we explain it to them that we will do our best to stay out of the way and really not to be seen, it's comforting for them. They appreciate it. And, you just explain it that we do what we can, but sometimes we will be blocking someone no matter what we do.
That makes a lot of sense.
So the communication is very important.
Having good communication and that backup support, that person from the networking room who can be there from any technical support, makes a lot of sense. The last question I have for you, Yuda, and this is, we've really covered this subject in depth. I can't even think of any other questions. The only thing I would ask is, are there other ceremonies outside of weddings that you get involved in that are used kind of some of these similar ideas and tactics, strategies?
I do. I can't, so like I said, I'm under Midabrim Communications, and the reason why I like having the company umbrella, we do the Simcha stream for the weddings, because we can't use the same name of live happy events for funerals, and we broadcast funerals as well. And funerals is kind of like closure. It gives family closure, feeling that they were there when the person was buried. Even it could be, for example, if somebody's buried in Florida and I'm in New York and I can't make it to Florida, then it will give me closure if I'm able to watch it live. So definitely funerals is one of them that I do. And another thing that we do for news events, sometimes we cover local news stuff, because they can't, till they get the satellites up and running, it may take quite a bit of time. So we kind of give them a hand. We're their backup solution. And bar mitzvahs, bat mitzvahs, or any major event. I've even done family get-togethers, family conventions, families that wanted to bring in different people from different places in the world. I once did an event in Jerusalem, and we brought in the family from Australia over through vMix, through other ways, and we had in Florida, we had in South Africa, and we had Canada as well. So it was really interesting, a lot of fun, and everybody was able to get together. It was a family get-together.
Very interesting. Well, thank you so much for your time, everybody. This has been Yuda Widawsky from Midabrim Communications, giving us all the details that you could possibly want to know about live streaming. Thank you so much for taking your time today with us, Yuda.
Thank you very much, Paul. It was a pleasure.
Well, that's it, everybody. We do have a free guide on how to live stream weddings, including a complete free course. But this was really one of the most important pieces of content that we have here, really digging into all the details with Yuda here. Yuda, where can people find more about Midabrim Communications?
Well, we have our website, www.midabrim.com. And also, you could go on to SimchaStream, SimchaStream.com.
Great.
Those are the best ways to get on.
That sounds great. I'm sure they can contact you and email you from there.
Yes, they can. I would enjoy it.
Well, thank you so much again, Yuda. Thank you so much for watching this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe to learn more. You can't become a video production expert overnight, so subscribing to our YouTube channel is going to get you a lot of great information. And that's all we have for you today. Enjoy, and hopefully your next wedding or live event will benefit from some of these great tactics and strategies. Take care.